Hi, my name is Shah, and over the summer I worked on wastewater treatment in a lab at Columbia University. I worked under the leadership of Dr. Kartik Chandran in the Earth and Environmental Engineering Department. Wastewater is very important to treat. Wastewater consists of many nutrients, such as ammonia. This ammonia needs to be removed from the water, or it will flow into the surrounding water bodies and make these regions severely hypoxic, meaning there is very little oxygen in the water. These low oxygen concentrations lead to the death of many fish. This event is not limited to developing countries. It happens here in New York. This here is a picture of the Long Island Sound. It shows the depleted oxygen concentrations. The darker the color, the less oxygen there is. And essentially, the affected areas can have no recreational use, no swimming, diving, fishing, and more. So our objective is to remove the harmful molecules in wastewater by converting them to harmless ones. We focused on the removal of nitrogen through a process called full nitrification and denitrification. First, nitrification takes place. Ammonium nitrogen is converted into nitrate nitrogen. Then denitrification takes place, and nitrate nitrogen is converted into nitrogen gas. Nitrification takes place with dissolved oxygen, and denitrification takes place without dissolved oxygen. One of the concerns with this process is that nitrous oxide, N2O, is emitted. This is important because nitrous oxide is an air pollutant. It is also a greenhouse gas. Its greenhouse effect is 320 times as strong as that of carbon dioxide. Nitrous oxide also lives about 120 years. In addition, it leads to the destruction of the ozone layer because N2O reacts with atomic oxygen to produce NO, and this NO destroys the ozone layer. Last summer, I worked on a 10-liter full nitrification reactor. The nitrifying bacteria converted ammonia to nitrate. During our experiments, the reactor was placed under anoxic conditions for 6 hours. Anoxic means no oxygen. After 6 hours, the oxygen was turned back on. It is important to observe how the reactor reacts to these changes because these changes occur in modern-day implemented reactors. Before, during, and after the experiment, various tests were performed to determine how the reactor reacts. This graph here shows the nitrous oxide levels during the experiment. The x-axis here shows the time, and the y-axis here shows the nitrous oxide levels. And basically, there were no emissions at first under aerobic conditions. However, after the oxygen was turned off for 6 hours, there was a small spike of emissions. This spike was most likely caused by an instability of the ammonia oxidizing bacteria and the nitrite oxidizing bacteria working together. Then, after we turned the oxygen back on, there was a huge spike of nitrous oxide emissions. This peak was caused in response to the change from anoxic to aerobic conditions. I will explain how this peak occurred on the next slide. And this reaction summarizes full nitrification. Full nitrification is ammonia to nitrate, but there are various intermediates involved, such as hydroxylamine and nitrite. And during the anoxic period, a lot of ammonia was accumulated because full nitrification only occurs under aerobic conditions. After the switch to aerobic conditions, the accumulated ammonia began reacting to produce hydroxylamine and nitrite in large quantities, which then decomposed into nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide is very harmful to our environment, so hopefully we can try to limit these emissions in the future. In addition, this process of removing nitrogen is very expensive, which is why wastewater treatment processes are not widely implemented in developing countries. It is very expensive because full nitrification requires constant aeration. Also, denitrification requires a carbon source, and these chemicals are very expensive. To conclude, there are many modifications that can and should be done to make this process more sustainable and economical. And thank you. And I would like to acknowledge Dr. Kartik Chandran, Ariana Kaholo-Rato, Hoshan Lee, Edward Irie, and Dr. Rachel Cox, Dr. Bloom, and Mr. Pike. Thank you.